I looked when the Son of Man broke the sixth seal, and there was a great earthquake. Revelation 6 verse 12. At the sixth seal, mankind will look at this great earthquake in terror. For as it says on that day, men will go into caves of the rocks and into holes of the ground before the terror of the Lord and the splendor of his majesty, when he arises to make the earth tremble. In that day men will cast away to the moles and the bats their idols of silver and their idols of gold, which they made for themselves to worship, in order to go into the caverns of the rocks and the clefts of the cliffs before the terror of the Lord and the splendor of his majesty, when he arises to make the earth tremble. Isaiah 2, verses 19 through 21. And at the sixth seal both the heavens and the earth shall be shaken. For as John of Patmos witnessed, I looked when the Son of Man broke the sixth seal, and there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth made of hair, and the whole moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth, as a fig tree casts its unripe figs when shaken by a great wind. The sky was split apart like a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. Then the kings of the earth and the great men and the commanders and the rich and the strong and every slave and free man hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains, and they said to the mountains and to the rocks, Fall on us and hide us from the presence of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand. Revelation 6, verses 12 through 17. The first of the great cities was called Babel, for this is where people came from all over the world to trade. And as we know, the people of Babel tried to exalt themselves by building a great tower. And today what is the modern city that is known for making herself great by building a tower into the heavens? New York City. And ironically her tallest building, the World Trade Center, was built in order to bring together businesses and government agencies involved in trade from all over the world. The World Trade Center Association theme. And the World Trade Center was built in semblance of the number 11, which is the number of equality, for man would attempt to make himself equal to God. And 11 proved to be a fateful number. For we all know what happened on September 11, 2001. And ironically Manhattan Island was first discovered on September 11, 1609. And the towers were built in the image of 11 and each of the towers housed 110 floors with a total of 11 million square feet. And American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the towers of 11 which would come crashing down. And in the greatest irony of all, in defiance of God's sovereign warning, Babylon the Great would build the one World Trade Center over this original site, but God is the only creator. For in the beginning, God created the sun and the moon to hold governance over time. And as the lighting of these great lights marked the beginning of time, so shall the darkening of these great lights mark the end of time. For as it says at the sixth seal, the sun shall become black as a sackcloth of hair, and the sun shall be covered in sackcloth as one mourns after the death of an only son. For when the sixth seal occurs, soon the ensuing nuclear holocaust shall occur, and the earth shall be covered in a sackcloth of burnt ashes. And the earth's stratosphere shall be covered with a sackcloth of carbon from the smoke of the burning nuclear fires. And when the sixth seal occurs, men will cast away their objects of worship, their idols of silver and idols of gold. For the almighty US dollar was first based on the standard of silver and gold. For the US dollar was originally tied to a bimetallic standard, based on both gold and silver, but it moved to a gold standard after 1900, which it remained on until 1971. Wikipedia. But the US dollar is just a false image of gold, for as we now know, in 1971 Richard Nixon defaulted on the gold standard, making the US dollar fiat money, or money that is no longer based on a precious commodity, but on the false image of an idol standard. For the false image of the US dollar is now based on the petrodollar, a monetary system that is supported by both oil and military hegemony. In other words, we presently secure the monetary exchange of Middle Eastern oil in US dollars, in exchange for the blood and hegemony of our US military. For as the third seal of the prophecy warns, save the oil and the wine. Revelation 6 verse 6. And today we have chosen the greatest worshipper of gold as our leader. For as we know, his residency is lined with linen and furniture made of gold, and his logo is emboldened in letters of gold, and his towers are painted in gold. And as he once tweeted of gold, this is the golden rule of negotiating, he who has the gold makes the rules. And where do you suppose the sixth seal shall occur? When the sixth seal happens, the sky will be split apart like a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island will be moved out of their places. Thus the sixth seal shall occur in a city where every nation shall be moved out of place. And that place shall be New York City. And contemporary authors are finally recognizing the inherent risks of the city. As author and environmental theorist Catherine Miles told Trevor Noah on The Daily Show, an earthquake is long overdue to hit New York and America isn't prepared. Miles is the author of the New York bestseller, Quakeland, which investigates how soon an earthquake is expected to happen in New York City and how ill-prepared the country is to handle it. New York is 40 years overdue for a significant earthquake. It's a national problem, said Miles. And according to several seismologists at Columbia University in New York City, New York is positively vivisected by faults. Most of them fall into two groups, those running northeast and those running northwest. Combined they create a brittle grid underlying much of Manhattan. And remember this: New York City experiences greater than a 5.0 quake at least once every 100 years. And the last one occurred in 1884, that means the new city is significantly overdue. But of much greater concern than an earthquake is what lies just upstream from New York City. For the Indian Point nuclear plant is a 3-unit nuclear power plant located in Buchanan, New York, just north of the city. It sits on the east bank of the Hudson River, about 25 miles north of Midtown Manhattan. The reactors for this plant were originally built in 1962 and produce about 25% of the electricity utilized in New York City. They were originally supposed to be shut down over 20 years ago. Furthermore, in 2008, researchers from the Columbia University Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory discovered that the Ramapo Fault passes less than 1 mile north of the Indian Point nuclear power plant. Also, an MSN report based on the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission data concluded that the Indian Point nuclear reactor number 3 has the highest risk of earthquake damage in the country. And recall, in the wake of the 2011 Fukushima nuclear meltdown following a massive earthquake in Japan, the U.S. State Department warned that any American in Japan should stay beyond a 50-mile radius from that area. As such, columnist Peter Applebaum wrote in the New York Times that such a radius around Indian Point would include almost all of New York City except for Staten Island, almost all of Nassau County and much of Suffolk, all of Bergen County, New Jersey, all of Fairfield, Connecticut. However, because this is such a densely populated region, this scale of evacuation would not be feasible. The report had to conclude that current radiological response system and capabilities are not adequate to overcome their combined weight and protect the people from an unacceptable dose of radiation in the event of a release from Indian Point. Review of emergency preparedness of areas adjacent to Indian Point and Millstone, March 7, 2003. And just as Isaiah prophesied of the sixth seal, its streams will be turned into pitch, and its loose earth into brimstone, and its land will become burning pitch. It will not be quenched night or day, its smoke will go up forever. From generation to generation it will be desolate, none will pass through it forever and ever. Isaiah 34. But following the sixth seal, after the destruction of the new city, there is great hope. For this is the final hour before the Son of Man shall return. For as the prophecy says, after this I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth, so that no wind would blow on the earth or on the sea or on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the rising of the sun, having the seal of the living God, and he cried out with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, Do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the bondservants of our God on their foreheads. Revelation 7, 1-3. and those who choose to follow the rising sun, they too shall be saved.